So today I want to talk about how hail may be viable for the first time since Generation 2. And this makes me really excited because I've always loved hail. It's been my favorite weather condition since weather was released in Pokemon, and I've always just loved snowy weather in general. The reason I think that hail may be usable now is because of all kinds of new abilities, stat buffs, and Pokemon that have been changed to more better work with the weather condition, along with one really good move that I feel like would be integral to making a hail team work. And I hope to see hail get as much use as teams of the past like Rain, Sun, and Sandstorm teams that we all know are so strong and demanding in both VGC when Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon ruled the metagame, or in regular Smogon rules when Sandrush, Excadrill, and Sandstream Tyranitar were such a powerful duo on most teams and so hard to stop. So before Generation 7's release of so many snowy Pokemon, there were only a handful that were used in a true snow or hail team. That was like Aurorus, Abomasnow, and they were the only weather setters. Both of them are completely littered with weaknesses. Aurorus has 2 4x weaknesses in both Steel and Fighting, and Abomasnow has some of the most weaknesses out of every Pokemon in the game. Now that Gen 7 has come around, there are actually 2 new Snow Warning Pokemon that are much faster and in some ways harbor less weaknesses. Those 2 Pokemon are Alolan Ninetales, who is a Fairy Ice type who's quite fast, good enough special defense bulk, and its special attack is okay, but it does get Nasty Plot, so that helps it quite a bit. Vanillux also gets Snow Warning as an ability now, and this is actually very useful because you can bring Vanillux in with an Icy Rock and have one that's max speed Jolly with Explosion, and that means you would get 6 to 7 turns of that snow with another Pokemon that would benefit from it, and you would be able to fire off a very strong explosion from an ice cream cone. But I'm just happy to see that Vanillux might get more use. I know I'll be putting it on at least a few teams to try to make this work. Along with that, Beartic and Alolan Sandslash have an ability called Slush Rush, which works the exact same way as Swift Swim in the rain. Slush Rush doubles your speed in the hail, and I will be surprised if I don't mess up saying that at all. Also, the move that I think could be so potent in this meta is Aurora Veil, which is the equivalent of setting up Reflect and Light Screen in one turn, and I assume that Light Clay can work with them, but it can only be done in the hail. So being able to get both screens up at one time and having all damage for 5 to 8 turns just sounds absolutely insane. And even though Vanillux can't carry this move, Alolan Ninetales can, along with a few other Pokemon that benefit from the hail, such as Regice, Cryogonal, and Articuno. They can all set up this screen and then switch out into something like Beartic or Sandslash that could take advantage of such powerful defenses and a super speed boost to hail. So they could be run with Life Orb, and they could run moves like Swords Dance or Bulk Up, and just sweep through teams with their doubled speed and doubled defenses. So I really hope to see this work. So I've only mentioned maybe 5 or 6 Pokemon so far, so I was thinking, what could make this work better? Who could be good teammates for all these Ice-type Pokemon? Because the Ice-type is a bad Pokemon defensively. It's probably one of the worst because it only resists itself, and it's weak to Steel, Fighting, Fire, and Rock, which is actually quite a few common weaknesses, especially if you're running against teams that are carrying Stealth Rock. So I was thinking Clefable or Clefable, however you prefer to say it, would be a good teammate because it gets Magic Guard, so it wouldn't get affected by the hail at all. It does share the Steel weakness, but it could use the screens as an advantage to set up something like Calm Minds and be able to sweep your opponent's team if they weren't prepared for it. Other Pokemon that could benefit are Ice Body Pokemon, and that could include Dugong, that could include Walrein, and a few different Pokemon. There's also Articuno and Regice that I mentioned earlier that actually get a leftovers benefit from Hail, and if you also run leftovers on them, they'll be healing 12.5% per turn, which is pretty significant on defensive Pokemon. Also, Pokemon with Overcoat are completely immune to the Hail, so you could run Pokemon like Mandibuzz and not even have to worry about the residual damage. Originally, I was going to put down that the item Safety Goggles could be very useful, but really, if you're running leftovers, then you're then you're nullifying the Hail anyway, and you still get to heal if the Hail is not up. It also boosts Blizzard and Weather Ball, so Pokemon that can carry those moves, like, let's say Roserade, for example, carries Weather Ball. It could run on an Ice team and suddenly have a very potent Ice-type move in addition to its Grass-type move and Poison-type coverage, and it also gets Psychic-type coverage, so that could be a way to expand coverage on a Pokemon that isn't necessarily fit for such a team. Now, even though I'm trying to present all of the good points, obviously there's still some bad to this. So the problems with Hail are it's still not very beneficial. Sand boosts defenses in Steel, Rock, and Ground type Pokemon, or their special defense at least. There are a ton of abilities that benefit from Rain and Sun, and Rain and Sun both also reduce the power of other moves, which is why Pokemon like Scizor and Ferrothorn are normally seen on Rain teams, for example, because Fire is weakened. Hail doesn't do anything like that, so that makes it less beneficial, and the teams can only be so diverse, because even though I've been over a few different Pokemon that could work well in the weather, most are just taking 6% per turn when the Hail is out, and they're really not doing much for the team otherwise. And as I mentioned before, Ice types have a lot of weaknesses. They aren't very defensive, and if you're going to call it a Hail team, then at least 3 to 4 of the Pokemon are going to be Ice type, so that's very hard to cover those weaknesses. So Hail may need to be a more hyper-offensive team as opposed to bulkier teams like, I'll be honest, like I normally like to run. And these are my thoughts on this type of weather and how this meta may go. The first competitive team I'm going to try to run once I complete the game is going to be a Hail team, and I am more than willing to listen to all of your suggestions. I want to know how you all would run a Hail team. And a little note, I think Icy Form, Cast Form is probably the coolest Pokemon. One of the best looking simple designs for Pokemon ever, and I've just loved it since Generation 3. And this is why I'm so happy that this weather is working now, because now all the weathers are useful, and I just can't wait to see it. So comment down below and let me know not only what you would do with the weather in this meta, but also let me know anything else you'd like to discuss with me or you'd like to hear my thoughts on, because I'd love to let you all know anything you want to know. I don't know everything about the game, but I feel like I have a decent enough understanding to at least strike up a bit of discussion and get you thinking a little bit.